I want to tell you guys as let's jump into our Monday night empowerment session. And I do get very excited with the opportunity to give you guys education that will help empower you so that you can find solutions for your health based on body awareness and paying attention to what your body is telling you. And let's start right off with hearing what Amber has to say about how she did this very thing.
Hello. I wanted to quickly tell you about my experiences with the products in the Bella package and food poisoning. So, quite a while ago, I had food poisoning so bad that I was found passed out unconscious on the bathroom floor. And then I passed out a couple times on the way to the hospital. And the doctors made me wait so long for many hours until I was taken back and seen. They told me that there was nothing they could do for me. So when I got home, I took some Probio and Vertizymes. I took a couple of Vertizymes throughout the day. Then I had Cinnamate, and then I sipped Soul Vital throughout the day. And I rested that day, and I was, feeling better as the day went on, but super weak still, but not throwing up or anything, just better. And by the next day, I was actually completely fine. So my family had plans to bring people over to take care of me. My mom came from out of town thinking she was going to have to really do a lot of work to care for me. But we actually spent the time she came shopping. So we just kind of hung out because I was perfectly fine. So it was like the sickest I'd ever been, really. And I really, really believe that the Soul products brought me out of it and really helped me. So I would totally recommend them to anybody who's suffering from any stomach ailment or just in general for general digestive health. Okay, well, thanks for listening.
So I just found that so exciting. And I just wanted to make certain that you guys were aware that not only are we using these products to get our digestion up and running, but these same type of products can be used to recover from an intense stress or in this case, food poisoning, such strong, impressive food poisoning that the doctors couldn't do anything for her. So how neat that she had the awareness of what the Soul products could do and could use that to bounce back out of it. So again, thinking about that digestive energy, even in a bigger picture here. So I want to remind people that we have gotten used to hearing the statement, you are what you eat. And we know this. We know that if we spend our days filling up on junk food, well, honestly, we're going to build a junk food body. And if we fill our days filling up on healthier foods, we have a more better chance to build that healthy body. But that's not always the case. And the reason is because you're also what you digest. We can be putting all the right foods and doing all the right things. But if we cannot break down, digest, and assimilate what we're eating, then unfortunately, a lot of it is to no avail. So keep that in mind as we move forward. And one of the biggest things that we're going to find impact digestion is stress. Stress is a huge impactor. And how does it show up? It can show up in things like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, or constipation. It can show up in decreasing your stomach acid, as in either you don't want to eat or you eat when you shouldn't have, because the stomach really is taking its energy differently in different places. And let's think about the stress response. When the body's stressed, it goes into fight or flight mode. That means it wants to protect you. It means it needs its energy diverted so that it can help you flee from a situation or impending danger. It is not focused on breaking down the food that is in your stomach. So therefore, when it pulls the energy away, it's pulling away the stomach acid. The food sits there, it's not broken down. And what does food do when it sits around? It starts to ferment and causing discomfort. So that's what's very important that people understand. If you are stressed and don't feel like eating, it's not always the best idea to put something in your stomach. The body, again, doesn't make any mistakes and it's directing that energy otherwise. Stress can also cause pain in digestion, bloating, heartburn. And sometimes for people, that pain, well, let's just think about it. Let's move forward here. That may end up being diagnosed as things like IBS. For instance, they have the stress is hitting them, and then they may go back and forth between diarrhea and constipation, and there's pain caused because that we've got gases trapped in between different areas of constipation. We have a real mess that's going on. So stress hits that, and then stress all of a sudden can blow everything out. And then how does stress impact our immune system? Well, it can actually weaken it. And the immune system, a large percentage or part of the immune system is actually found in the gut. So when we have foods we can't break down, that for instance might be causing inflammation, or stress that is causing indigestion, therefore causing irritation and discomfort, we inadvertently impact our immune system and cause a multitude of issues. And it's all again coming because, in these cases that we're looking at right now, because of stress. And so I found it very interesting. So, stress doesn't just come from an event that's outside of us, it can come from our way of thinking as well. And so, to find this quote from this doctor, Antonio Jimenez, a negative thought can kill you faster than a bad germ. One of the main things is to detoxify your mind. A lot of people are aware of things like a gratitude journal or that process. I make it a point every day, not only when I'm going out for my walk, there's a certain section of my walk that's all about gratitude because, again, I don't want to try and digest these, these negative, if there's negative thoughts or things I'm concerned about. And then I run it through again when I'm falling asleep at night to have good sleep. So it is makes a big difference. So one of our star players in the Bella Health program, and honestly, on virtually every single person I ever work with, Vital is the number one thing that I use with them. It was one of the 7 things we had initially when we started. And when we look at the components of the Bella Health program with that Vital, this is what we had, this is what we used, and this is what we got results with. So I wanted to look at just the adaptogens that are in this formula because of how they impact stress. And let's look at what some of them may do that may go specifically to some of our digestive. And again, you all know that we could spend an entire day talking on each one of these plants and barely skim the surface. So ashwagandha is one of the 6 adaptogens in it, and it is routinely recognized for its abilities to calm and used for nervous conditions. So think about what we just talked about, how stress can impact the gut that way. Eleuthero, digestive energy. It can really helps the body to pull that energy. That's why athletes like it and use it a lot. And then your jaugelin. I've always liked jaugelin because its unique ability and it's recognized for how it helps to regulate blood pressure. I have used Vital a lot in combination with a cinnamate and sometimes a few other things, but to help get blood pressure where it needs to be so that Troy, for instance, I was able to get him off his blood pressure medicine using the Vital was a big player. And then the adaptable, which has these in it also. Astragalus is known for its ability to work with ulcers and chronic diarrhea. And remember, adaptogens help your body to navigate stressors so that they don't have a long-term hard-hitting impact. It helps you to get through it easier. Schizandra, known for helping work with anxiety, and it is recognized as one of the most beneficial adaptogens for the liver. Now, liver is known for working with anger. It's one of the most hardest working organs that we have. It deals with toxins. And so any way we can support, and hormones, any way we can support that liver additionally is going to be good. So having an adaptogen that targets that is really beneficial. And then rhodiola, and it helps reduce cortisol. Cortisol, when we get a cortisol out imbalance, a lot of people recognize it as when we get kind of that tummy that's there, and it comes after periods of hardcore stress. And remember that stress can come from all different ways. So very interestingly, one of the phone calls I got about 2 hours ago was from this young man. And he's told me, he says, quote me on this. He says, and this was a well-known football player around the area and coach, and he does a lot of charity work and stuff. He says Vital prevented him from being reliant on energy drinks. He was literally buying them by the 30 pack. By the way, guys, I didn't even know they came in that big amount. He says, and using 2 daily, but not anymore. He says, Vital leaves him energized and clear headed. And what he's also noticed, because I've got him using the longevity as well now, is how he's been able to think better. He's not reaching or buying the energy drinks. He says, do you know how much money I'm saving by not getting these? And even more importantly, we all know how much he is saving his gut health, his liver, his adrenals, so much by being able to have a healthy alternative for this. And then I wanted to look at the emotional impacts on digestion. And a lot of people know that I love this book, Feelings Never Buried Alive, Never Die. It's a very good reference book. And there's always an emotional, a spiritual, and physical components that are involved when we work on healing ourselves. That's one of the reasons I think the Soul Naturals products work so well, because as a person starts to feel better physically, emotionally, they start to dial in and they start to process things that maybe they haven't worked with. And that's where these compass blends are so phenomenal and come into play. So what I thought I'd do is look at a couple different conditions that directly tie to digestion. And we can look at some of the underlying thinking or commonalities with emotions that people find. Indigestion, if this is a commonplace there all the time, sometimes we can find this emotional components tied to it. Maybe feeling everyone's against you. Maybe you've had a feeling that you need to fight your way through life, having feelings of anxiety or fear of losing a job or losing security. Now, obviously, indigestion can also be caused by things like a little earlier, I'd made some deviled eggs and it wasn't sitting well. So I grabbed some cinnamate and it settled it within 5 minutes, but if we have some of these thought processes or emotions that are there all the time, we might want to pay attention because they can cause physical ailments, intestinal diseases, looking at inability to assimilate and absorb the new things in life, or wanting to live in the past, or your desire to stay in a comfort zone. A lot of people know that I dealt with my ex was very abusive, but then I dealt with colitis about 25 years ago. And literally it felt like my clothes would cause pain. And I realized I'd always kept so much of my emotions to myself and I didn't process them, that my body was trying to digest them, and that won't work. And so if we look at here, inability to assimilate, those things were in the past, but I still never processed them. Gastritis, we can look at feelings of uncertainty or anxiety. Gallbladder can tie into feelings of bitterness, anger, or wanting to force things. I find a lot of bitterness tied in with gallbladder. Think about that statement, feeling galled about something. Diabetes. Sometimes it looks, one common one I don't have on here is feeling like there's not enough sweetness in life to go around. But there's often disappointments in life. Emotional shock is a big one when it comes to diabetes, or the joy of life is gone, feeling it should have been different. So this is why this is so important, that we're getting these adaptogens in, that we're coming in with things like these compass blends to help challenge us. And you can just roll this on topically or on your wrist, feet, it doesn't matter, externally, for helping to help your body process this. And ulcers, this will be another thing we see in digestion. So worrying about details, frustration about not having things go the way you want. Maybe you feel like it's just too much to deal with, too much tension, anxiety, feelings of conflict. So if you resonate with any of these, I've always would recommend that you address these. And maybe one of the easier ways is to use something like the compass blends while you're coming in physically to help prevent this from becoming a long-term issue. Now, this is a really near and dear story. And I asked this person, I reached out and asked that she would share. I would tell you she has a little bit longer of a story, but guys, this story is incredible. And this literally, by the time she reached out to me, she was already an year into the process of what she was going through. And that's what I want you to listen to.
Hi, my name is Delena. Um, I've known Valerie for quite a few years now, but it was within the past couple of years that I really reached out to Valerie and we restored my health. About 2.5 years ago, I had a baby. It was my 7th C-section. If you're unaware, when you have a C-section, they pump you full of antibiotics before you even go in to prevent infection. Got out of the hospital after having him. Immediately had, within the next couple weeks, had a bulging disc in my back. So I was on a lot of ibuprofen, a lot of painkillers, because my back issues were so bad. And then flash forward a couple months later, I was having intestinal bleeding. I was losing a pound a day. My hair was falling out. I couldn't really even think straight. And I was so nutritionally deprived and probably pretty dehydrated that I was starting to really not be able to think clearly. At my worst, my rock bottom was the day where I was at the city pool with my kids for swim lessons, and I thought I saw my roommate from college, and I was this close to walking up to her and asking her why she was lifeguarding at a pool in her 30s up in Kansas when she's from Oklahoma. And all of a sudden, I had a conversation in my head where I said, Delena, she died in 2009. What are you doing? And I was this close to walking up to her and talking to her because I thought it was my roommate. I was not doing well. I was so nutritionally deprived. Like I said, I was losing a pound a day. So everything I ate, it was like my body was rejecting food, everything, to where I was down on rice and chicken. And I had a food intolerance panel run, and several things came back on that food intolerance panel. So I removed those from my diet, but I was still having issues. So I finally contacted Valerie and I said, I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what's going on with me. Like, my body is rejecting food and I'm scared. You know, when you're losing weight and you're not trying to, it's a very terrifying feeling. So immediately Valerie was just so calm and confident. She was like, okay, it's fine. We're going to get you back on track. The first thing that she had me do was get onto Soul Vital, and I would mix up a batch of Soul Vital and freeze it in ice cubes. And then I would start with 1 ice cube of Soul Vital a day in a huge thing of water because I was, my digestion was such a mess that we started with the smallest amount. She also had me on very, very diluted, large amounts of diluted dandelion tea to help, cleanse my liver. And from there, we built upon adding one food back in at a time. We started with sweet potatoes. After I was on sweet potatoes for a while, we added in avocado. From there, we added in just different foods to where I was actually able to eat things other than chicken and white rice. I started Soul Adaptable to help with my adrenal issues that I was having. As you can imagine, that was a high amount of stress for the past, however long I was dealing with all of that. So we had to get my adrenals back in check. We did the ProbioQ, adding little amounts in, aloe vera juice. We had a whole regimen that we added in slowly over time, little by little, and then we would build up to where I was drinking 2 Soul Vitals a day, plus Renew, plus Excel. And I was able to drink all 3 of those in a day, and I was able to build up my digestive tract to where I am happy to say that I am able to eat so many more foods than I was eating when I called her. My mental health is better, my physical health is better, and I am eternally grateful for all of the help she gave me. And in the process, she gave me the confidence to take my own health into my own hands and try different things, and she's taught me a new way of life, which is, you know, if I'm not sure how a food is going to react, you know, how my body is going to react to a food, to try the smallest of amounts, wait 3 days, see what happens, try it again, wait 3 days, and if I don't have a reaction, then I can increase that amount of food a little bit by little bit until I'm eating it. So she's given me the tools to reclaim my health. And I am forever grateful, because as a mom to 7 kids, I don't have time to be sick. I don't have time to not be able to think clearly or hit an adrenal crash at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I am forever grateful for Valerie and the Soul products.
You guys can see why I'm so excited about this woman and her story, and so glad that she shared it. So. And with this, I had asked Greg to, if he would share and address a little bit about quality with Soul. Greg, do you need me to, stop share and make you a co-host?
No, I'm okay, Valerie. What I promised that I'll do, and I thought, it's funny, kind of the way you worded the text, I wasn't thinking about grabbing slides, and I thought I probably should have. And I'll promise I'll do that again in the future, okay? Because it might be helpful to show some of the things. But what Valerie asked me to talk about with quality was, well, a couple of things. You know, not so much outlining all the steps of soul quality, because there are places we can all go and look at that. And actually we're adding, as there is work being done, enhancing that portion of the website, they're actually adding more elements that give some more detail. If you haven't been there in a while, especially on the new beta site, the new Soul Naturals that you can find, if you scroll down a little bit, check out, and it says check out the new site, you can find in the blog area some more information. So that's one part of it, but what Valerie asked me to talk about a little bit, we sometimes will get a question from people, hey, is Soul at a pharmaceutical grade? Because of the nature of our therapeutic plants that we deal with adaptogens, and not just adaptogen powders, but we deal with special extracts. People wonder that, and it's a great question, to be honest. Before we founded Soul, all of us had experience, all but one of the founders, in a company where a great deal of what we did was a pharmaceutical standard set up in quality. So that's all we knew. Now, the reason I say a great deal is because it is actually never the case that a natural health product company manufactures all of its stuff at pharmaceutical, because there are regulations, and certain substances, certain materials that you use are going to be used only, if they're used at all, they're going to be used at a pharmaceutical standard in terms of its blending and encapsulating and storage. And other materials, they don't need to be. It's sort of, how do I say it? The GMP standard, which is the industry law for that material, is the same as it would be for a pharmaceutical. So it just doesn't make sense. And sometimes what people think, oh, it's one and the same, and it really isn't. It depends on the material. However, you're not getting anything less, if that makes sense. If you know that the quality is up to standard. All of our experience, because we've dealt with all the government agencies involved, you sort of get to see firsthand. You have various agencies come out, like it seems like all of them, and look at different aspects of manufacturing. And so I hope I've answered the question. Pharmaceutical standard, I'll try to give you an example. It is always applied where it is necessary with the material. But to say that a natural product facility is at pharmaceutical standard, that's actually not a real thing, if that makes sense. And it's the same thing with many pharmaceutical companies now manufacture natural products, and they use different areas to do them. So they have a different system depending on what they're manufacturing. However, if they're using all of the procedures as they are legally required then you're always getting a full quality in the product. So an example of this would be like probiotics. You can find companies that do not refrigerate them and sell them. You can find probiotics in quite a few foods that are not refrigerated. And you also can find them in plenty that are. But if you're finding them in something that does not refrigerate, then that's not up to standard, pharmaceutical or otherwise. And so in our case, that was one of the very first things we brought in was a large walk-in freezer, not just a refrigerator, but a freezer, because storage of the raw material and of the finished good always happens there. And we put an overage in the product above and beyond the label, taking into account how long those different friendly flora survive at a typical room temperature, so that by the time you get them, you still have more than the label is stating. This is an example of something that really is not a pharmaceutical standard at all. Something can be made according to a pharmaceutical standard and then not be developed with a quality that exceeds the label, if that makes sense. So there are a lot of examples that you can find in what we do that does not directly relate, because we go above to ensure a certain result, above any standard, pharmaceutical or otherwise. And those words are kind of crazy words, because we tend to think of, if it's a pharmaceutical standard, then it looks at everything. There's so much art in good formulas that goes along with the science, and you can actually meet the minimum of the standards of science and not have a particularly good blend, or have a blend that is completely pure and completely meets label claim and does not give you much active ingredient. There is a great wiggle room in any standard. And so really, I always love the statement in this. To some people, it's disheartening, but it shouldn't be. The statement that I love, one of our leaders, his father used to tell him, son, the label endures whatever is written upon it. The proof of something is in the results that it gives. And quite a skeptical view of life. Now, this person lived in another country, was highly educated in the country, was outside the US, and knew that there's great variation. So when it comes to standards, I do think it's good to ask about those things. That's why I think it's a good question. What are the standards? Are there pharmaceutical standards? Are there GMP standards, good manufacturing practice standards? Are these all kept? Yes, they are. But are they enough? Never. They're never enough to guarantee a good product. I can give countless examples over the years of how a material, as a buyer, looks to save some costs and will buy a certified material that just has less actives in it. And yet it's pure and it's potent. Now, I want to add just another thing too. Because we use the same machinery, tableting machines, we don't right now use tablets at Soul. There are reasons for that, for the pressing of tablets, etc., and digestion. We prefer loose powders sealed in drinks because of people like we just heard from. When you have a very delicate situation, digestively, the body can deal with with good quality liquids a lot easier. And so we don't do much, but we do have capsules, and we have soft gels, for our omegas. Those have to be in a pharmaceutical standard facility. You just can't do them right if you're not. And capsules, we use the same machinery that you'll find in pharmaceuticals. There are a number of them in Utah as well. And I'll just tell you a little story. As we've been expanding over the past year, Blake has added, if you don't know Blake Christensen, he's added a number of clean rooms, what are called clean rooms, to his warehouse that we exclusively operate out of. Well, one of the machines he just purchased it's a very expensive machine. By the time you get all the parts that go with it to encapsulate, it is the same machine that you would use for any capsule, whether it's pharmaceutical or natural, etc. And the woman that runs this for him now that we've got this new machine online, where she just came, was from a pharmaceutical company. And in the interview process, as he talked with her, this is somewhat, I guess, personal information, but I won't give you any names. She was actually blown away when she looked at the facilities and commented how much nicer the clean room was than the one she had come from for years, working at a pharmaceutical. In other words, there are certain minimum standards of air filtration and system processes between different encapsulating in terms of keeping the room clean. And then there's the very materials that you use for the walls, the floor, and the room itself. So we've actually, if any of you are going to be out here in the summer, say, because lots of new, I would say all those new clean rooms will have their machinery delivered by then. Some of the process is a little slower with COVID. It's slowed everything down. Some of these machines are built in Italy and different parts of the world. Some are built here in the US. If you want to come and see them all in play, come out sometime. Just tell Valerie you want to do a road trip, come and stay in the Soul House, and you'll be able to come and see it yourself. I think the evidence is in using the product. We definitely have an open door where you can see for yourself. I wasn't super surprised, but I did like to hear what this very capable woman who knows these machines inside and out, has used them for years, as I say, for a pharmaceutical company. She jumped at the chance to come and do this. So I will say we're absolutely committed to quality. Over time, you have to constantly upgrade and look, because there are improvements in systems and machinery and even materials. We have, for instance, better materials for our vegetarian capsules. There's another example of, you can have a pharmaceutical facility that is encapsulating in gelatin from cow's hooves, and that doesn't always work for people, even though it's highly processed and it's pure and it meets all the standards. So a way that we can feel like we're doing better for a larger group of people is to provide a capsule that doesn't have any animal components, and the ways that these materials are extracted from plants is always improving. And I'll give you an example. You hear a lot about, for instance, carrageenan. There's a lot of misinformation about carrageenan or carrageenan, because it's actually the Irish name. It's the Irish word for a certain seaweed that it is extracted from. But it's become known as the substance that's extracted, this gum that comes from it that is really useful in capsules. Suddenly now it's synonymous with the Irish word for this seaweed. And now you have that substance being extracted from a variety of other seaweeds and even made synthetically. And it's just, oh, that's carrageenan. Well, it's actually not. Carrageenan is this particular seaweed, and the substance has been extracted for, I want to say, more than 1,000 years of history knowing this. In fact, the Chinese learned how to do it as well. And there were no harsh chemicals used. And so a lot of the things that you'll read about now are done now in something that's taken on its name of a substance. And again, I mention this because you can have a pharmaceutical standard and be using something that, yes, is highly processed, a lot of harsh chemicals, ultra purified, and then you're using it and some may or may not break it down well. That's the worry with that. Or you can use it where you can use the original natural source, the proper source, and avoid all of that. And yet that doesn't stop that there's confusion in the marketplace. So those, I hope those are helpful. There's so much to it, and we are always learning. And when we learn of something that's a better way, that's part of our soul certain quality standard. If you read in those 10 points, we're always learning, because all of the sort of the companies that are doing it in earnest because they believe in health and they believe in trying to find the best way to bring these herbs and substances worldwide. Some come from the other side of the world. We're using reindeer lichen from the Arctic. And so ways that can extract them in a better way, make them more stable, make them easier to digest, make them more sealed so that they don't get exposed to oxygen. Any way that we can do that improves it, this is something we'll look at. And I think it starts with your entire infrastructure, the rooms where we work in, the level of pride that people feel in what they're doing and maintaining. There are extensive software systems now, I will tell you, that did not exist even 7 years ago, that will take you through the process, speaking of a pharmaceutical standard and a GMP standard, of every single test that needs to happen along the way, and it won't let you move to the next thing unless that test is entered and fulfilled. So that didn't happen in the industry we worked in 20 years ago. You better have it trained yourself and be doing it, because there could be human error. Now there always will be, but those odds are really improved as a lot of the innovations, both in technology, in equipment, and in extracting methods, help us constantly be looking at quality. And I do look at quality as a process much more than I look at it as, oh, there's a standard here, because generally the standard's not good enough for us it is in some things, but you can't just rely on it and say, oh, we meet the standard, we're good, in our opinion. So that's probably more than you wanted on that, Valerie, but definitely a passionate subject for me.
That's great. Thank you very, very much. And actually, yeah, I was glad you're able to answer that. Thank you very much.
You bet.
So we have one other person I asked to share, because this person is a practitioner as well, and they've been seeing the same type of results in their clients that I had been seeing with the digestive and gut health when we were implementing the products that are in the Bella Health program.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How are you doing? So I'm going to talk about Bella Health. When I first started in natural health, the number one thing that we brought to the table were 2 core ingredients. So what we are doing is probiotics and enzymes. Why probiotics and enzymes? Without our gut, our GI tract, our small and large intestines, getting the proper nutrients, having the correct, I call it the Peachtree dish of who we are, of not growing fungi. And fungi actually ends up being candida, mold and fungus. Ringworms are fungi. A lot of people don't realize those different components that brings to the table. So when our GI tract and our eliminative channels can have the healthy gut bacteria, what happens is that our brain starts working properly, our body starts holding on to nutrients. We've had people that are diagnosed with ALS, and actually in rebuilding the gut, which takes years sometimes in this situation, have actually been able to gain strength and not be on a deterioration. So in that part, what will the Bella Health program help you with? It wakes up your digestive system. It stabilizes daily energy so we can go take our walks or go to physical therapy or go do those activities that we need to do in order to get things going. It empowers digestive and immune health. So what it's doing in that immune part is it's taking that fungi. So in parasitology, we have 4 different categories, and it's not just worms that we think about. We have protozoas, and it's actually the fungi category, which most of us deal with. The other part is it calms the gut down, which calms the brain down. So that gets us out of anxiety and overthinking, and it actually quiets us down. It was best said the other day when I was talking to my niece who's been put on this program, but she is waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. She's walking, she's working out. And she says the biggest thing is that the clarity in my head. Oh my God, the clarity in my head. So that's what brings about a balance in our mindset and our behavior. It actually helps us to start showing up. Why Bella Health? Electrolytes, balancing out that blood sugar with the cinnamate, the vital, bringing in that Peachtree dish within our gut. That's going to change your life. I'm all about Bella.
So right here is what Chris was talking about with the Bella Health program with the Cinemate, Vital, Vertizymes, and Probio. And everyone knows that I'm touting also utilizing the longevity as part of your foundational approach. And then we talked about the ability and how to use those compass blends as an add-on, maybe to address those parts, just when you feel like it, when you need it, and help you to stay on top of things. So I want you to take a little bit of time and put this to heart and think about this. Every time you eat or drink, you are either feeding disease or fighting it. So I just think that's very important with so many, actually more issues than people are aware of that are caused from how we are actually assimilating and digesting our foods. And pay attention, are we actually adding to the situation or taking away from it? Hopefully you will join us next week on Monday night, and we're going to look at the differences in approach between a symptomatic or a foundational approach to health. And Soul is all about the foundational approach and just how the difference it is when we're coming in and using adaptogens to do that.